You're listening to the Potaholics Comedy Network. Potaholics.com.
Welcome to Codex, a history of video games. My name is Tyler Osby.
And I am Mike Coletta.
And this week we're going to be discussing Chapter 9 and 10 in The Ultimate History of Video Games by Stephen L. Kent.
Yeah, I'm excited for these chapters, man. We're getting into it.
Yeah, we're starting to get into some good stuff. Like, the really early stuff is interesting from an academic perspective. Now we're starting to get into the stuff that, like, we've actually played and, like, have experience with, you know? And, like, we talk about Space Invaders or Pac-Man. It's like, oh, this is
we're
neat.
Getting into games today.
Yep.
And specifically the golden age of video games right now. So we're going to start with Chapter 9 and the arcade resurgence of 1978.
Oh, boy.
So Taito, I think that's how you say it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Created a little game called Space Invaders.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that one.
Yeah, and it was originally invented as a hexadecimal test for evaluating computer programmers. I don't know what a hexadecimal test is.
That's a good question. I mean, I know what hexadecimal is, but I wouldn't know how to.
What is hexadecimal?
Hexadecimal is a system of counting. So humans count using a system called decimal. It's base 10, right?
Yeah.
1 through 10. Computers, you often talk about binary counting. That's 0 and 1. Hexadecimal is basically 1 through F, where after 9 you start counting A, B, C, D, E, F. So there's 16 total.
Whoa.
Numbers. I think it's because translating from binary to hexadecimal is much easier than translating to decimal, and it's like just as easy for computers to know to do hexadecimal as it is for them to do binary.
So that's interesting. Well, that's why Space Invaders was invented, to learn that.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, that's cool. It was the game, if you didn't know, it's pretty popular. It's an 8x5 grid of space aliens coming down the screen towards you, and you have to shoot them. And you lose when they hit the bottom of the screen. That's pretty much it. And you could not win Space Invaders, which is important. It was just to get the highest score.
It's like when I play basketball. I can't win.
You can't win, but you do it by PR, you know?
Right.
Because sometimes most games, Tyler gets like 5 or 6 dunks and then like 8 or 9 3-pointers, but that's like his PR best. You know? He still loses.
I still lose.
Because the guy he's playing is really good and gets like 27 dunks.
Yeah.
Because you practice with LeBron is usually how it works.
Yeah, LeBron and Clay.
And Clay, those two. Yeah, definitely. I mean, so he can never win, Tyler, but he's just working for his PR. The interesting thing about Space Invaders is the company execs at Taito gave their blessing to distribute the game in Japan as an arcade game, but they weren't really thrilled about it. They didn't think it was going to go. They're like, yeah, we'll let you do this. I don't know why. Like, we don't know if this is actually going to get anyone. So, and they were very wrong. It took a few months to catch on, but eventually it became crazy popular in Japan. Like, they had... by the end of its arcade life, Space Invaders had over 100,000 machines in Japan alone.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah. Then, in 1978, Space Invaders came to the USA.
Space invaded the USA.
It invaded. Space Invaders invaded the USA.
Space invaders in the USA.
Yeah, they actually thought that Space Invaders wouldn't translate to American audiences. That's what the Japanese execs thought, because... they figured most American games were about driving, sports, or war, and if it wasn't about those things, then Americans wouldn't want to play them.
Oh, they underestimated our love of shooting aliens as well.
Oh, yeah, everyone loves shooting aliens. That's right. It's what Master Chief does. Keith Egging was the vice president of product development at Taito of America at the time, and he convinced executives to bring it over to the U.S.
Gotcha.
And they tested it at a secret location in Colorado.
Like a secret underground bunker.
Yeah, but like a bar. Just like a bunker, but like a bar.
Except they served alcohol to the public.
The bar was called The Bunker. That's probably what it was.
Was it really?
I don't know. They didn't give us the name. Did he like how I did that, though?
That was good. I was fully on board.
Yeah, we could be lying to you, audience, and you have no idea. No, they actually don't say where the secret location is in the book.
It was well kept.
Yeah, exactly. They did a great job. But it came out in the U.S. in October 1978, and Space Invaders was an instant hit. And the reason it was an instant hit is because the machines themselves sold for $1,700. But weekly, the machines earned $300 to $400 a week.
Whoa.
So in a month, you pretty much have that thing almost entirely paid off.
Yeah, and it's just making profit.
Just pure profit at that point. Yeah.
I wish I owned a bar in like the late 70s, early 80s and could just buy an arcade machine and just rake it.
Oh, yeah. Especially when we get later in this chapter, from what it sounds like, it was just money everywhere.
Yeah. That's why arcades existed, I guess, was because you just pop these machines down and you just sit back and count your fat stacks of quarters.
You know, it was the Bitcoin of its day. Wonder how many Lambos were bought with the arcade. The other big hit game that started the resurgence was Atari Football. Yeah, I had never actually heard of this. This was really interesting, but it was the game that used a trackball. They did not invent the trackball, though, because Taito, going back to them real quick, Space Invaders people, actually made the first game with a trackball, and that was in a soccer game they released. And then Steve Bristow at Atari saw this and was like, we can totally do this here.
They still use trackballs today, like Golden Tee.
Golden Tee, yeah.
And that's still a big bar thing.
Did I ever tell you I was at a bar in Auburn one time, and I think I was just got out of college, and I was playing Golden Tee with my friend. Not good at this game. Don't know how to play it, but I had $1. Let's do it. And this guy was like, you want to come up and make it for some money? And I'm like, no. Like, what?
I already lost $1 on this.
Yeah, I'm not going to put... What? Are you trying to hustle a person that's really bad? You're supposed to hustle people that think they're good.
Yeah.
It was so weird.
You should have hustled them. You should have been like, oh, yeah. But then you would have to actually be good later.
I am not good.
That's the hard part of hustling. You got to actually be good.
You got to actually, pay to play here. Do it. The football was designed by Cowboy Boot Beefcake, as I described him, and as he was described in the book, Mike Albaugh. He's a big dude. Cowboy boots. I don't know why I wrote that note in, and I'm trying to really, really remember why I put that in there. I think they said he was a big dude and he wore cowboy boots, so I put Cowboy Boot Beefcake in the notes.
Sure.
Yeah, it makes sense. He designed the game. The trackball was designed by Jerry Liacek. I thought this was really interesting because he's the guy that designed almost all controller mechanisms for Atari. So, for example, the handles in the game Lunar Lander, which I believe we get to later in this chapter, the joystick for Star Wars, and the dual joysticks for Battlezone were all designed by this guy. He was their controller guy.
Okay.
Yeah. Is it haptics? Is that what they call controller stuff? Isn't there a fancy name for it?
Input devices, I guess. Haptics is like the feed, like the rumble stuff.
Oh, the rumble of it. Okay.
Yeah, like a lot of controllers have haptic feedback now, which is like that sort of weird rumble that like can kind of be positional and not just your controller shaking. But I guess it's all technically haptic feedback.
I remember when I had a rumble pack, it scared me. And I was not ready for it. And N64 was a scary time. Scary time when you had that
64, that first rumble pack game.
What was?
Star Fox 64.
Oh, it was?
Yeah, I think so. It was bundled with a rumble pack.
That was so interesting. I mean, we're going to get there, but I always thought it was really interesting that the Nintendo 64 had the expansion unit.
Yeah, it had all kinds of like stuff that didn't fail like most of those accessories do.
Yeah, because I remember Donkey Kong was the one that came with the expansion unit for 64.
Yeah, there's a whole reason for that too, which maybe we'll cover in a later.
Ooh.
Well, I mean, it's pretty quick. We can take a quick side note. Donkey Kong 64 came with an expansion pack because there was a bug in the game that it wouldn't start if it didn't have the expansion pack. They didn't actually use the expansion pack, but they couldn't figure out the bug, so they just decided to bundle the expansion pack with everything.
So it would work?
Yeah.
That's funny. I never tried to play the game without the expansion pack. Would it just not start?
Yep.
That's crazy. I love it. Football. Back to
Back to
Atari
1978.
Football. The Atari Football only had X's and O's on a waist-high table, and I think it was 2-player, what it sounds like. And the game was on a 3-minute timer, which is how they controlled it, because otherwise there was just no way to end this game. So after 3 minutes, you'd have to put another quarter in. But the popularity of Atari Football died when football season ended.
Oh, that's kind of crazy. So it's like sort of filling people's competitive, like, I want to have some sort of football experience itch, but then once football was back on TV, they were like, I don't need this anymore. I can just watch it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting.
So I don't know. So it sounded like when it was...
Oh, when football season ended.
When football was going on, everyone played it.
Okay.
And then and minute January hit, it wasn't as popular anymore. But that makes me wonder, is in 1979, in the fall, did it have a resurgence again?
Yeah.
Did people play it again because it was football season? I don't know.
That's a good question. Oh.
Yeah. And so those are the two big games that really started the resurgence of arcade games in general, and really brought them into the forefront of American pop culture. But now you may be wondering, what is Nolan Bushnell doing under all this?
I'm wondering that. I'm like, what's our dude Nolan Bushnell been up to?
Our hero, Nolan Bushnell. That's kind of how this whole book's designed. He was let go of Atari, but while he was still there, he was working on a plan because he wanted to solve the problem in the game industry of how to get people to play your games without depending on a bar or a sleazy bowling alley. Because at this time, they were kind of in really sleazy places. I think they mentioned like bars or pool halls is usually where you would find a video game arcade game. But he wanted to make it so that it was family friendly, because at this time there was a lady. If Nolan Bushnell's our hero, this is our villain.
Oh no.
Yeah. Her name was Ronnie Lamb, and she hated games. She was from Center Reach, Long Island, and she thought that video games were a triumphant waste of time for children. They were expensive, even though they only cost $0.25, and they were excessively violent.
Well, only $0.25 in 1978 quarters.
I wonder how much $0.25 in 1978 is.
50 cents.
Yeah, right. But Lamb went on the Phil Donahue show, and she caused multiple small towns across the country to ban arcades altogether by her lobbying against arcade games. She thought, even though like the games were super popular at the time, some malls even saw that and were like, we're not carrying them. Even though they would make a lot of money doing it, they just didn't
They took a moral stance.
That's
interesting.
You know? But Bushnell wanted to get rid of the sleazy stigma of video games. And he felt the best way to do it was to be like, how about I bring in kids and their parents? Like I bring in families.
Mm-hmm.
So he decided to have a place that would serve pizza.
I like pizza.
And have a robot stage act.
I love robot stage acts.
Yeah, if you haven't figured it out by now, this place was called Chuck E. Cheese.
Whoa!
He was the founder of Chuck E. Cheese. And the best part about it is in the book, he said it didn't even matter if the pizza was good, because he thought the families would come in just for the games and the robot stage act, which is funny because I remember they did not have good pizza in the 90s.
No.
It was bad.
No, but in the 90s, I was young enough that pizza was pizza. You know, whatever. I'll eat anything. I'll eat any pizza. I remember the robot stage act not usually working when I was at Chuck E. Cheese. I maybe only saw it once, and I went to Chuck E. Cheese tens of times.
In the Anchorage one, because I went to the Anchorage Chuck E. Cheese in Alaska, it would like light up, but some of those robots weren't moving the way they were supposed to, or moving at all.
It was kind of creepy.
Yeah, and now that Five Nights at Freddy's, this is the second Five Nights at Freddy's reference. We had on last episode. Oh, way to take something from my childhood and ruin it. Oh, yeah. Al Alcorn said that the way they got malls to have Chuck E. Cheese's in them is they would say, we're a pizza parlor that just happens to have games.
The Trojan horse.
Yeah, exactly. So they would be like, we're a pizza parlor. We're not a game place. We're a pizza parlor for families and kids.
Yeah, but you have games, though.
Yeah, but I mean, they're just in the side room.
All right. Seems legit.
Yeah, right? And the mall manager's like, I mean, we need to fill this space, so yeah, let's do it.
You going to pay the rent? Yeah, okay, fine.
And the funny part is, I was actually wondering, like, where did they get the robot animatronic animals? And those were actually designed in Grass Valley.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, they had that technology from way before, and they like built it, and they're like, because you can program it to move. It actually reminded me, there's another one called the Showtime Pizza Band.
Mm-hmm.
And if you go on YouTube, you can find videos of people taking these old robot pizza parlor bands and reprogramming them to play modern songs, and it is amazing. Like they play like Usher's "Yeah," it's so good, and it looks so timed, like perfect. It's so good. We can watch them after this. Right. Everyone, go look at YouTube and type in "Showbiz Pizza Band" and then whatever song you want, because they might have like programmed it. Definitely Usher's "Yeah," and then the MGMT song "Electric Feel." Those they really nail it on there. They look like they're actually jamming out. It's really cool. The pizza place like was called Pizza Time Theaters, and only the restaurant was called Chuck E. Cheese. I didn't know that. So if you went, we're going to Pizza Time Theaters : Chuck E. Cheese is what it was called. But when I was a kid, everyone just called it Chuck E. Cheese.
Yeah, well, they must have figured it out. I mean, this is in mid-70s, right, when they started.
Yeah, also that robot mouse is what you're selling, you know?
Yeah.
That's where it is.
Or the poor soul who had to be in the suit.
Yeah, oh man. That's the worst. I knew a friend who had to be in the Red Robin suit. And the best part is he's like, usually it's women that can do it because their legs are like skinnier. And he's like, but I just have skinny legs, so I could be the Robin.
Yeah. I used to work at a radio station that the mascot was a wolf. So I've been in that wolf costume.
Oh yeah?
Man, that's I do not recommend.
Is it a smelly costume?
Smelly
it
costume.
Can't smell good.
It doesn't smell good. You always sweat. And it was a kind of a summer job for me.
Mm-hmm.
And so we would go out and it would be 100 degrees outside and I'd be in this freaking suit. And it would just be awful.
Oh, that sounds rough.
I still have lots.
A lot of bad memories.
Most of them are not in that suit.
A lot of bad memories in that wolf suit.
Yeah. Anyway.
Joel, another guy, what made so another guy, Joel Hochberg, I think, he had a similar idea to this in 1961, but he only went after adults.
Oh,
Kind
he
of
went after adults with robot.
with video game with a barcade essentially.
Oh,
he had
okay.
a barcade idea, and then but
May have been too early for that.
yeah, he was ahead of his time, and then Bushnell really sold it with the whole thing centered around kids. And he actually began work on Chuck E. Cheese before he left Atari. He told Reporter that he had a rat costume in his office as early as 1974. That was a pretty weird thing to have in your office, but it makes kind of sense. And the Bushnell purchased an abandoned Dean Witter brokerage office in San Jose in an outdoor mall, and he converted it into his first Chuck E. Cheese location in 1974.
That's exciting.
Yeah, the initial restaurant was much smaller than today. It only had 3 stages, I think small stages, like on either side of the pizza room, and it was like cafeteria-style seating with long tables for guests, so you didn't have to share, you know,
Yep.
which I don't know, how do you feel about those sharing seats? I don't like that long table thing.
Like sharing with another group that's there.
Yeah,
it's kind of weird. But if you think about it in the context of like this is sort of a birthday party thing, and I don't know if that was the goal at the time, but it turned into just birthday parties as far as I can remember. You would be there with like 10, 20 other kids, and then it made sense.
Yeah.
If you're all in the same party, then it made sense to be there. If you're just there with like a mom and a dad and 2 kids, like kind of weird to be sitting with like 3 or 4 of the family.
That makes a lot of sense, actually. You know what, Tyler? You sold me. Once again, selling it. Warner acquired the rights to Chuck E. Cheese when they bought Atari, but we're not interested in this at all. So what ended up happening is Bushnell when he left the company and was sent to the beach, as they say, he asked to buy the rights to Chuck E. Cheese, and Ross sold him the entire project, including the rights to the robot technology, for $500,000. And Bushnell paid off the debt to Atari in $100,000 a year increments.
Okay.
Yeah, within weeks of leaving, he began planning a second location, and this time he took something from his time in Salt Lake City. Because remember when he worked at a Midway in Salt Lake City.
Oh,
when he was
that's
a kid.
right.
We mentioned that in the first episode, and the second episode, sorry, and he decided to include Midway games like Skee-Ball and stuff for tickets, because at this time Skee-Ball was dying, and the company that made it, Philadelphia Toboggan was the name of the company, they actually were going out of business. So Bushnell actually kind of saved this game and decided like the whole ticket aspect of Chuck E. Cheese, where you earn tickets and you give it to the kids, and then the kids take it to the store and buy candy and stuff at the end.
Right.
So that was all Bushnell, and I think even later on, they said Al Alcorn was like, this is kind of like gambling. You know, they knew what they were doing.
With the tickets, you mean?
Yeah, but at the same time, they were like, it is just like kids have fun. Like, they get to get a prize at the end of the time for being there.
Yeah.
Like every kid gets like a gift for being there in the end, which is kind of fun, you know?
Yeah.
So that's kind of what they decided to do with that. And
it's a skill. It's a rewarding your skill. Like the better you did at the games, the more tickets you got, right?
Yeah, I remember reading a Reddit thread about a dude who played Skee-Ball and made money by flipping the big ticket items on Craigslist. He was that good at Skee-Ball. Like, he could just hit the 100 every time.
Wow. I mean, if you did it, I bet if you practiced 8 hours a day in a couple of weeks, you'd just be nailing it all the time.
Yeah, it's like muscle memory.
Yeah.
He even said, he's like, some the places would be like upset at him for doing it, but then some of the places were like, well, it's just a thing. Who cares? Like, yeah.
You know, we should have done was just found out where those dolls are sourced from and just flipped them himself.
Oh, yeah.
Just buy them and not spend all day paying to play Skee-Ball.
Yeah.
Unless you really like Skee-Ball, then I guess.
I mean, I guess he really, really likes Skee-Ball.
Yeah, okay. Well, I guess you really, really like Skee-Ball then.
An important thing to note, lastly, about Chuck E. Cheese is the second location was in an old abandoned Toys R Us building in San Jose, and it was one of the largest arcades at the time. Like, he did it up for this one. It actually had a revolving spiral ramp, and it went around a 20-foot statue of Chuck E. Cheese.
Wow. In an old abandoned Toys R Us
In an
building.
old abandoned Toys R Us.
So you mean every Toys R Us building now?
Yeah. Oh.
Too soon?
Too soon, Toys R Us.
Rest in peace. Rest in peace, Jeffrey.
But by the end of 1979, Bushnell began selling Pizza Time theaters as franchises, and a location cost approximately $1.5 million to construct, but that would usually pay for itself in 6 months.
Oh, that's a great return.
Yeah, and this was the beginning of the golden age of video games that turned associated ventures like Chuck E. Cheese, like Showtime Pizza, Showbiz Pizza, I think was another one, into billion-dollar success story businesses. And it all was because of games like Space Invaders. Like Space Invaders and Atari Football put arcades on the map. If that didn't happen, then Chuck E. Cheese would have failed 100%.
Oh yeah, because it really was all about the games. Like I wouldn't
Yeah.
have gone to Chuck E. Cheese just to watch some robots and eat pizza.
My Chuck E. Cheese, when I was in Anchorage, it had the below section for kids, but it had like the top section for like older kids, like teenagers.
You had a multi-level
Yeah,
Chuck E. Cheese?
and it had like Mortal Kombat and stuff up there.
Whoa.
And my brother and I always wanted to go up there, but we thought we weren't cool enough. We're like, I don't know if we can go up there. That's where the big kids are. It's scary.
We just had a junky one, I guess, with only one story, and it was just all the...
Chuck E. Cheese is still a thing, right?
Yeah, as far as I know.
Dude, I kind of want to go.
You can't go without kids now. They get mad at you.
Really?
Yeah.
Even if it was like a group of friends?
Yeah,
Not
especially if it's a group of friends.
It's not like
Well,
one weirdo wearing a trench coat?
I think either way, they're like, if it's the threshold is like, if it's just one dude, that's kind of weird, right? If it's more than one, that's not even weirder, but I think they're worried about just shenanigans.
Oh.
Like, I don't know. I just remember one time we had a group of us and we were like 18 or 19. Maybe if you're like older, it's not like in a group of people, but there's like a few of us when we were like 18 or 19 and we like went there. There's like 4 or 5 of us and they were like, nah, you don't have any kids with you? Like, get out of here.
What?
They wouldn't let us in. Yeah.
They're like, if you want to go have some shenanigans, you should go to the restaurant Shenanigans.
Yeah.
So they
That's
said
right.
to you?
That's
Wow.
right. And so that's where we went. I've never been to a
I've never been either. I just only know it from the Super Troopers movie. That's it. But that was chapter 9.
All right.
All right.
We made it through.
We did it.
We move on to chapter 10, which is more of the Golden Age, where we're really diving deep on the Golden Age stuff. We'll keep going with that next week as well. I want to take a minute to talk a little bit about like what is called S-curve adoption in technology. There's a sort of a pattern that all technology, like successful technologies, follow in terms of adoption, and it's called an S-curve because when you look at it on a graph, we're on a podcast, so like we may have to link to this in the show notes or something, but it looks like an S on a graph. So it starts slow, and then the slope gets steeper as you move on, and it like picks up steam really quickly, and then it sort of starts to level off towards the end, like okay, we got everybody, we're still growing, but like now we're on to the laggards. So when we talk about the S curve, there's 4 stages. There's the early adopters, the early majority, the late majority, and during the early and late majority is where things are really taking off. And then there's laggards at the end. And I think at this point in our video game history, we're still in the early adopters phase. It's starting to take off, right? The slope is starting to get a little bit steeper, but we still have a long ways to go before we get to the laggard stage. And actually, I think overall in video games right now, where we are in 2018, we're hitting the middle of late majority.
Really?
That's where I think
so
we are.
we're
Yeah.
still in late majority in 2018.
Yeah. We're not in laggards yet, but we're in late majority where it's like where it becomes something like movies or telephone, right? There aren't really people who don't watch movies. Like there are people now that say, "Oh, I don't play video games. I just don't."
Yeah.
When you talk about movies, there are not people that say, "Oh, I don't watch movies." There's just different kinds of movies, right?
Yeah.
Everybody watches something. They just don't all watch the same thing. So, but we can also link to this other graph. There's a good graph that you can see that sort of charts a lot of different technologies next to each other, like the telephone or cell phones, and you can see they all have this sort of S-curve adoption. So that's why I just want to take a break to talk about where we're at in the S-curve adoption. We'll check in later with that in the later episodes of this podcast. We'll keep checking in on this S-curve adoption, I think.
Stay tuned to Tyler for all your S-curve news.
That's right. S-curve radio. So now we're on to chapter 10. At this point at Atari, a lot of people were starting to leave. The old guard, the people who had started the company, the early founders were starting to leave. Nolan Bushnell had taken off to go do the Chuck E. Cheese stuff we were talking about. Joe Keenan was like pretty much out the door at the same time, pretty close behind him. Gil Williams waited a little while, but then he and Gene Lipkin left too. They at this point, like most of the original people were pretty much gone, except for a boy, Al Alcorn.
I love Al Alcorn. Can I say that? I've been reading this, and I was like reading it kind of like a story, and I was getting really attached to the characters, and Al, I'm like, not Al.
Yeah.
Don't leave, Al.
Well, he's in a little bit of a pickle at this point, because all his buddies are gone, and he'd been there forever. He'd done lots of cool stuff, but ever since Warner had bought Atari, he started to feel like, we were going in different directions, because before Warner had bought the company, they were like, he felt they were an engineering company. They were run by engineers. It was all about making the cool new tech and selling it. They were making tech to make money so they could make cool new tech. After Warner bought them, it started to feel to Al like it was a marketing company. Like we're selling stuff, yeah, we have to make this stuff, but more importantly, we have to sell this stuff, right? And so being an engineer, Al was like, this doesn't feel great to me. So one of the last things he did while he was working there was he started to work on a VCS replacement. The VCS, remember, is the video computer system, which would be later known as the 2600, but before there were later Ataris, the VCS was just called the Atari, or the VCS. He wanted to design a replacement for it. And he codenamed it Cosmos. This thing didn't hook up to a TV, but it had an LED display, and it had these super cheap cartridges that ran on some technology that was like Mylar or something.
Yeah.
It was like this doesn't seem like a thing that can store data. I'm not exactly sure how that worked. We need to look that up. But yeah, it had super cheap cartridges. It had an LED display, like black and white. And it had more of those like overlays, kind of like the Odyssey had for putting on the thing. It was like kind of a handheld thing. So at this point in time, there was a perception that Alcorn had been given a group of people to work with, and that he wasn't being held accountable for results. He just got to play in R&D land all day long, and he was never he never had to produce anything. He just got to play with.
That sounds like the perfect place for Alcorn.
Yeah,
R&D land.
Yeah, and that's I'm no CEO, but if I were running a company and I had the balance sheet to do it, I feel like it's always good to keep these kinds of people who want to just make stuff. You should just keep them in a room and let them make stuff all day long. And if 90% of the stuff they make is not shippable and garbage, that's fine, because that 10% is what's going to rocket you into the future, right? And that's what I think Atari at this point didn't have quite a grasp on. They did not want to replace the VCS. Marketing, the CEO at the time, Ray Kassar, he didn't want to replace the VCS. He was like, these things are selling. We can't even sell them as fast as we can make them. So we might as well we can't make them as fast as we're selling them. So there's no need to replace it, because we can just keep making them and we'll just keep selling them, right? And Al was like, nah, dude, technology moves on, right? Let's make some
in the future.
So yeah, when they showed their prototype of Cosmos to marketing was like, nah, we're going to keep selling the VCS. So that just kind of sucked for our boy Al. There were a lot of other consoles coming out around this time, even ones that were technically superior, but the VCS remained the king. Atari still was kicking butt. And it's all about the games. When it comes down to it. If you've got a better console, it doesn't matter if there are no games for it, right?
The Atari had the most games at this point than any other console, right?
Yeah, and it was just remained the king.
It's not like PS3. It's got no games. I remember that.
Yeah. PS3 has no games. Now it's Xbox.
Xbox has no games.
So what did Alcorn try to do? He goes, if you're not going to market this, I'm going to market this thing. So they took it to CES and they set up their private meetings, because they had learned from the last time about selling things. You got to do them in private meetings. They set up the private meetings. They showed people. Some of the people they showed it to thought it was pretty neat. They sold nearly 250,000 of them. Like they got deals to sell 250,000 of them. They hadn't made that many yet, obviously, but they got deals to sell almost 250,000 of them. But then CEO Ray Kassar wouldn't build them. He just wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
Alcorn came back to him and was like, look, we got 250,000 of these we can sell. Let's do it. I've got the whole thing ready to go. You just need to say the word and we can do this. And Kassar was like, nah, dude, we're not going to do that. So it just kind of faded away. Like they just sort of didn't do it.
It was really sad when I heard this.
Yeah, it's sad. It's also some of the things that people were saying about it also that he met with was that, like, while it was really cool, it was like technically cool. Like the overlays they had to use like hologram technology that like is on credit cards and stuff, which is like really neat, but it didn't actually do anything that cool. It just looked cool.
Yeah, it just looked better, but the same kind of games. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was I guess it was ahead of its time in the sense that it was trying to do some new stuff with some technology that had like sort of was kind of new and like was really neat, but ultimately the new technology didn't help the games. It just looked cool. So ended up not taking off. They didn't make any of them, so it couldn't take off. But I feel bad for Al, because he wanted to make a cool thing, and he probably felt really good about it, and it was probably a pretty cool feat of engineering, which is what he wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
So you feel a little bad for him. I get shutting down that project. What I hope as we get further into this, we'll find that Atari does recognize the value of replacing the VCS, because, look, we can't still be playing a 2600 30 years later, right?
That'd be so weird. We're all like, yeah, Atari.
Yeah.
30 years.
30 years of Atari. Adventure 30.
Also, he left the company, right?
Yeah, he
After
pretty much
this?
pieced out at that point.
Oh, and he didn't get the benefits package that other people got.
No, because his lawyers like argued improperly for him, or he like like all the other people that got put on the beach, Bushnell and Keenan and all those guys. They had their lawyers all work together to get them a deal so they would have like a retirement package and stuff. And Alcorn thought, I don't know what he thought. He thought he could do better if he did it separately, I guess, and he did not do
From
better.
what I understand, like, yeah, he thought he was a part of that team, and I guess to them he wasn't.
Yeah.
I think the Warner people didn't look at him that way, and then he didn't get there. Because that package that Nolan Bushnell and them got was 1% of revenue, and they were pulling in like billions of dollars.
That's not nothing.
Yeah, and it's just like, sorry, man. Like,
yeah, he wasn't on any of that paperwork, and he was all mad about it, and there was lawsuits back and forth. But ultimately, he did not sign the same paperwork they did.
bummed me out.
Feels bad, man, especially because I feel like Al's our boy.
Al is our boy. Hopefully he comes back.
Yeah, I hope
I don't
he comes
know.
back.
I haven't read farther ahead yet, so
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm like,
Hopefully
oh,
he doesn't like do something bad and like
Yeah.
he's in jail now or something,
Al,
and
I
we're
need
like rooting
you.
for him. But so we're learning about this stuff as you guys
yeah.
do. But speaking of high technology and moving towards the future,
Ooh.
we're going to talk a little bit about vector graphics, which is a type of drawing images to a screen. It uses a different type of screen. But anyway, so at this point in time and still to today, displays use a technique called rasterization, where you take the thing you want to draw and you make it into a bunch of pixels and you put it on the screen, right? With vector graphics, it works a little bit differently. Vector graphics are lines that are put onto a screen. And I think technically the screen still works the same way with a CRT, but it's a different way of calculating that stuff, and it's a kind of a different way of displaying it. And it uses a little bit less processing power, but you can do kind of more interesting things like polygons and like sort of pseudo 3D stuff with vector graphics.
Yeah.
So if you've ever played a game like, we'll get into this later, but if you've ever played a game like Battlezone, where it's like, it's a really old game. 3D games weren't a thing at this time, but Battlezone is kind of 3D because of the way they just draw the lines, you know? So anyway, this is a sort of a new technique that's starting to gain some steam. It requires a different type of hardware at the time because all of the consoles at the time were set to do raster graphics. So yeah, they could be a little bit more detailed. They had some shortcomings, but they could be a little bit more detailed. It was just a different kind of way of doing this. There's a company early on called Cinematronics. They were an early innovator in this space. They sort of built this technology. They'll come back a little bit later. But in 1980, Atari had developed their own vector technology. The first game that used it was Lunar Lander. It had a realistic simulation of gravity, so it was kind of tough. You had to like land on the moon while conserving fuel, and it just had its graphics drawn in this way. So yeah, it's kind of neat. It had like this big two-handed lever for controlling the booster engines on the ship that had springs in them, which led to some complaints of kids who would get like really close to it and like be playing with these springs. They would be getting hit in the face by being too close to the controls. The game wasn't great, but it did sort of pave the way for another game that I like to call Asteroids.
Boom.
They built Asteroids in about 6 weeks.
That's crazy.
The crowd went wild.
That's
it was
crazy.
Yeah, it was a pretty big hit. By this time, the gaming audience had grown and they become a little bit more sophisticated. They weren't intimidated by the control schemes of modern games at the time. So at first, when people played Asteroids, they only last a minute. Because everybody's played Asteroids. I don't feel like I don't need to explain this, but you shoot asteroids, they blow up into smaller spaces. Or smaller pieces, you're a ship, you kind of fly around. It's super fun. There's some Space War stuff in there.
You gotta like dodge stuff, and then you gotta shoot stuff. And
yeah, there's a Space War system of the like jump to hyperspace where you like show up at a random point on the screen. It's kind of neat. But if you got really good at the game, you could play forever. It would just go on forever. There was one kid who set the record at 36 hours.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah. So like 36 hours is impressive in itself, right? That's just a long time to do anything at all. I've never done anything in my life for 36 hours straight. Ever.
No, ever.
Like never even come close to that.
Not even sleep.
Yeah. This kid could sleep though, and he could eat because he got so many extra lives that when he wanted to take a break, he just let his ship die over and over and over. He had so many lives that he could take breaks to do like to eat or I assume sleep. And then once he got low on lives, he just get back to it and start building that high score and keep going.
I do really want to talk about world record endurance games at some point because there's a documentary I watched on it where this guy was trying to beat the endurance game for. It wasn't it wasn't Donkey Kong. It was another. It might have been Donkey Kong Jr. I don't know, but it's just watching him do this and then like go take breaks and then come back because it's like, quick, you got to eat. Quick, you got to the bathroom. Quick, you got to. And then it just comes back to it, and he's like recording himself the whole time. It's crazy. Yeah.
That's nuts.
Yeah.
So yeah. Anyway, this kid broke that or set that record. I don't know what the record was before that, but it probably still is that. Yeah. So at this point, coin-op games are pretty successful, but Raycast are still all about that home console. So he's still about selling the 2600 or the VCS. He still wanted to keep that going. So the coin-op group at Atari, they felt pretty unappreciated. They made a lot of videos making fun of Atari.
Can you find these? I was wondering that.
We should look for them and see if we can link to them because there's some good ones. There's
if we
one.
find them, we'll put them on their Potaholics page for our show because I really want to find those. I thought about that when I read it too, and I'm like, oh, we got to look these up.
Yeah, they're probably cool. I like the idea of the outstanding in their field. Atari engineers are outstanding in their field, and it's just a video of them standing in a field. That's pretty good. At this point in Atari's in the coin-op division, and until about 1986 in the coin-op division, it was all about new ideas. There were, with very few exceptions, like Asteroids Deluxe and like Super Breakout and stuff. They didn't do any kind of remakes. They didn't even want to make games that were similar to other games, like in the same genre. Like whereas today we have like lots of games that are first-person shooters or fighting games, right? They're similar in some respects, but they're all different, right? If there was like a game that came out that was like, say, a fighting game had come out, they would not make it a fighting game. They would be like, this is too similar. We're making different games.
I love this.
Yeah. And you could do that at this point in time because the amount of unexplored space was just huge, right?
I love that they were all about innovation. That's what this whole department was about.
Yeah. All about innovation. They always wanted to make something completely different. And that's important because Atari wasn't the only company making games at this point in time. Midway was also churning out the hits as well. Those guys that were making pinball machines over at Valley, they're also making things because they bought Midway. So we got a little bit of competition going on here. Midway imported a little game called Galaxian from a company you may have heard of in Japan called Namco.
What's that?
What game did
you
Namco
mean they worked
make?
with the Yakuza? Or they didn't work with the Yakuza.
That's right. We'll get to Namco in just a second. But Galaxian was an improvement on the earlier Space Invaders game. It was in that same sort of genre. There were a lot of Space Invaders style games happening at that time. But Atari shot back. Shot back. I wrote that.
I get it. I saw it. I like it.
Atari shot back with Missile Command, which capitalized on like the whole Cold War thing that was going on at the time. They had the USSR invading the US, and the player had to like shoot down the missiles invasions as they came in. Like they had to stop it. When you lost, there was just like a full screen explosion, like a nuclear explosion on your screen. It just said "The End."
Oh,
that's in Terminator 2.
I liked that.
Scene.
I liked it.
So back to Namco. What did Namco make? You might ask.
What did Namco make?
What kind of game could be made out of a company called Namco? I'm gonna tell you about a game called Pac-Man.
I've heard of this.
Yeah. So Toru Iwatani, he's a dude who just wanted to make pinball machines, but Namco was like, forget pinball machines. We're not about that anymore. We're making video games now. He made a lot of video pinball machines for like setting high scores and like just like sort of integrating video games with pinball. And it was sort of a happy medium for him because he really just wanted to make pinball machines. But he's like, all right, I'll put some video game elements in here, make you guys happy. He made a bunch of neat machines. They did okay. But when he did decide to make a video game, he wanted to make one that was non-violent. He wanted to make something that he thought female players might enjoy because at the time this was a very male-dominated space. Still is to this day, very male-dominated. But he wanted to make a game that he thought female players might enjoy. So instead of making a game that was about killing, which is what all of the games were about at the time, he made a game about eating.
Because who doesn't love eating?
Right. Everybody's got to eat.
Everybody's got to eat. Everybody loves eating.
Yeah. So, that's Pac-Man. If you don't know what Pac-Man is, I highly suggest you pause this podcast right now, Google Pac-Man, find an online version to play for as long as you want, which is going to be a long time if you've never played it before because you're going to get super into it.
It's super fun.
Yeah, it's super fun. It's about this like little half circle thing that goes around a maze and eats the dots and there's ghosts trying to stop you, and it's very fun. It's a cultural phenomenon. Even people who have never played video games, they know what Pac-Man is.
Or they know his wife.
Ms. Pac-Man. Well, we don't know if they're married.
Oh yeah, Miss Pac-Man. Oh. They know his sister. Maybe it's his sister.
Who knows, right?
We got the same last name.
I'm sure there's some lore there. That
I gotta look up the hereditary nature of Pac-Man.
But yeah, so if you haven't played Pac-Man, you should definitely pause and go do that. All right, go do that.
Did you do it?
We're back.
Did you like it?
Yeah, it's great, isn't it?
It's so fun. I even will go to old arcades still and put a quarter. Because the best part is now arcades like that, they'll let you still play it for a quarter.
Yeah.
Which I love.
Yeah.
It's fun.
It's super great. So originally, and this is, if you've seen Scott Pilgrim, this is sort of one of the recurring jokes in Scott Pilgrim as he keeps explaining this to him. But originally, when they brought it over from Japan, they wanted to call it Puckman. But they thought people might take that P and scratch it out and replace it with an F, and it was a little bit too easy to do some vandalism.
Yeah.
So they called him Pac-Man.
Pac-Man. I also liked that they actually got the idea for him. I don't know if it's in here now, but from pizza. He took a slice out of, like it said in the book, he took a slice out of a pizza and he's like, hey, that's what it'll look like. And they actually grabbed that, which I thought was
simple enough
nice.
shape we can do that.
Yeah. I love it.
In an arcade. Yeah. So Pac-Man changed the game. Like I said, before games were mostly about shooting aliens, killing stuff. Now they were all about mazes. Like every time a really popular game comes out, there would be a ton of other games that would be trying to do kind of the same thing. Yeah. So whereas before it was like, oh, Space Invaders came out, now all the new games are about shooting aliens. Pac-Man comes out, now all the new games are about mazes and navigating these mazes.
It's like a Battle Royale game came out. And all the other games started having Battle Royale versions, hypothetically.
Or about 10 years ago when zombies were starting to really take off.
Oh, yeah.
And every game had a zombie mode.
It's so funny how you can just see it going through.
Yeah.
Or Guitar Hero, the Guitar Hero phase, and Rock Band. And
there was the MOBA phase in like 2009, 2010, where every new game that came out was like, we're a MOBA. and it just like... So anyway, that's a thing that we'll keep coming back to as we roll through this history stuff. The guy that made it, Toru Iwatani, he didn't really get much for his creation of Pac-Man. He maybe got a bonus, but this is unconfirmed. If he got anything, it's rumored to be around $3,500.
Yeah.
Just like for developing an international phenomenon, that's pretty paltry. You
gotta get that guy at GoFundMe or something.
Yeah, I think he's doing okay though. As far as I know, he still works at Namco. I did a little bit of research. I think he still works at Namco. He's a manager of R&D. So
he's like our new Al Alcorn.
Yeah, he's still doing okay. And in Japan, you're more likely to get like a promotion as a sort of reward for doing something great than like a straight up bonus. Like it's just a different kind of cultural thing. Here, if you did something great, Atari would just be like, "Here's $1 bajillion, go spend that." In Japan, it was like, "Here's a better job," which is just a different cultural thing. At this point, we got a new old challenger approaching. Williams
a challenger approaches.
Indeed. They came out with Defender.
Defender. I have never played this game. I've heard of it. I've never played it.
So Defender was pretty neat because it was in color.
Ooh.
16 colors per pixel, in fact. More than they thought they would ever need.
Like, well, this is too many. We could just throw like 10 of these away.
Yeah, and they didn't, though.
Mm-hmm.
They used them all, I guess.
Thank goodness they didn't.
This one was another space game. Mostly because it turns out space games are really easy to make. It's kind of abstract. You can sort of, you can have large portions of the screen just be black because it's space. So anyway, we got another space game here, but this one was cool because most games at this time, they were one screen. Everything you did in the game happened on one screen. Defender had some scrolling going on. So when you got to the edge of the screen, it kept going. And you would see other parts of the screen. It was like 3.5 screens big, I think.
Oh, wow.
Which is pretty large at that
pretty
point.
Big game.
Yeah. So that was pretty neat. Sort of a technical innovation that I think would carry itself into further games as well.
There was something I liked about that in the book. That they mentioned that the strategy, because the whole game was like, you save astronauts, protect astronauts from these aliens that come in and get them. And that there were different strategies. Like some people let the UFOs take the astronauts because they could go into this zone where they get a ton of points at the end.
Oh.
If they play it right. Like it was kind of, they're different. This is like different strategies for this game, which I thought was very interesting.
It is interesting.
Yeah. Just let these people die so we can get a bunch of points in the end. It's cold-blooded if you ask me.
The meta game was...
Yeah. Meanwhile, if I was playing as a kid, I would be like, no, astronaut, no.
I'm trying to save the astronaut.
Yeah.
But once you get into the cold-blooded nature of competitive gaming, take no prisoners.
Yeah,
if those humans got to die,
they got to die. Those e-humans got to die.
Yeah, that's right. So the last game that I want to talk about, kind of from this era, is a game called Battlezone, which is super neat. It's one of the first 3D games. This is a game using those vectors that we were talking about.
Yeah.
It's the vector style graphics. So using vectors, they could sort of simulate a 3D environment of like tanks shooting and firing at each other. I actually had a version of this game so I have a little bit of nostalgia for Battlezone. My dad had an Apple IIc, and I had a floppy disk, big 5 1/4 inch floppy disk with a bunch of games on it. Battlezone was one of them.
Ooh.
And it was super fun. I played the Apple IIc version, not the arcade version, obviously. And this would have been like a early mid 80s probably version of this game. And it was super fun. And I accidentally deleted it because I was a small child and didn't know what delete did, and I wanted to know what it did.
Oh,
So I deleted it off the floppy disk.
We got to find it now.
Yeah.
Oh, you know what I'm going to do? 1 year anniversary of this podcast. We get you a floppy disk with that game on it.
With Battlezone,
Yeah.
an Apple IIc.
Just to show I care.
Oh, man. That's great.
Tyler's been crying for days ever since I gave him that floppy disk.
It's just, wow. It was first-person game, so you were looking from the perspective of the person driving the tank, which was kind of neat.
I thought that was cool.
It had a cool like background scene of like mountains and stuff in the background, which is kind of neat. There's one guy, Owen Rubin, made this game, and there's one guy who kept bugging him he's like, when are you going to make the volcano active? When are you going to make the volcano active? And Owen's like, I have to make the game first. This is not an important. When are you going to make it active? When are you going to make it active? And then one day, Owen Rubin showed up to his desk, and there was a big old pile of code on his desk. That guy had made it himself.
He's like, I just did it. Here you go. That was the only thing he didn't code in the game, right?
That's
what he
right.
said.
Yeah. Owen, sorry, I got mixed up. Owen Rubin was the one doing the bugging. He wrote that part of the game, and that's why the volcano explodes in Battlezone.
Ah.
Yep. It was the only part of the game that whoever made Battlezone didn't code themselves.
I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. It's cool. It's like we're getting into it now.
Yeah. These are actually good games now. Like before, they were sort of proto games of like, oh, I can see how this could be fun.
Space War.
Space War.
Yeah, like that.
But yeah, so that's where we leave you. That's chapter 10 in the Ultimate History.
And then
of
we're
Video
gonna
Games.
the next chapter is gonna be part 2 of the golden age of video games.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. So what you been playing, Tyler?
Well, I'm still on that Destiny train.
Yeah.
Getting my milestones every week. Not quite 370, so I haven't been able to do the new raid. But I've been having a lot of fun. They've added some good weapons in that you can sort of grind for, so there's like kind of always something to do. Which when Destiny 2 first came out, there was kind of a problem with like, okay, I did all the things for this week. Now there's nothing left to do but shoot aliens, which is fun by itself, but it's nice when you're doing it for a greater purpose.
Yeah,
like,
it felt like you were like running errands every week, and then you'd be done. You're like, well, all right, Destiny's done. Yeah.
Now there's kind of some more stuff to do. I actually am really enjoying the PvP too in the Crucible.
Oh yeah.
So I've been playing some of that.
You've been playing. I haven't played any competitive yet. I've only
No.
been played quick play, which is fun. Yeah.
I really liked Iron Banner last week when it was.
Iron Banner was great. Well, I finally got all the achievements for Battlefield 1 today.
Wow.
Yeah. 50 out of 50.
All right. Is that 1,000 gamer score?
Yeah.
All right.
I really want the game to be like, you're the best, but they didn't do that. It might actually be 2,000 now that I think about it.
Ooh.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because they had lots of expansions.
Yeah.
And every expansion can add more.
Each expansion added more to it. So it's good. I got into the Battlefield 5 hype, or V, whatever you want to call it.
I'm in on that. Like I'm optimistic. It seems neat.
Yeah, so I got into that, and then my brother and I started playing it again, and I'm like, you know what? I better knock these achievements out. And I had 4 at the beginning of this weekend, and now I have 0.
Oh man.
I just knocked them out.
You just got them all done.
It's funny what happens when you try to go for them and how you do them really quickly. You don't realize it. You're like, oh, like one of them was just like, use this thing, and I'd never used it before, and I just loaded it in and used it. All right, it was done. This is like super easy. But yeah, I'm excited for Battlefield 5. I'm excited for that mostly because they said that I had co-op mode.
Yeah.
For like PvE co-op mode, which is what I wanted. My brother and I are going to play that together. I'm really excited to do that.
Oh yeah. I'll probably pick it up on Xbox because I think you're the only person I know that plays.
Oh yeah.
So I'll play with you.
We'll play it.
I'm normally a PC gamer, but yeah, I'll play on Xbox because when I bought Battlefield 1, I played that with you.
It was fun.
A couple of times. That was fun.
I'll still
like
play it with
Battlefield
you if you want to play it, man.
1. I need to fire it up more often.
I have that Navy cutlass now. I'll defend you like a pirate.
I just have too many games to play.
Oh yeah, there's too many.
Kelly and I are going to start Detroit Become Human.
Oh yeah, is that co-op?
No, I usually just watch her play those kinds of
Those
games.
are fun to do.
Yeah,
I
can treat it kind of like a movie, and she likes to play them. So.
I would sit in on that. You
Yeah,
know,
maybe
a couple
we'll start that
sessions of
later.
that. You know, I'll third wheel that game if you guys want.
Let's do it. Yeah. I was watching a buddy of mine who was streaming on Twitch the other day, and he started streaming Persona 5. And I got this, like, he's at the very beginning of the game, and I got this, like, pang of nostalgia. Like, I remember when I first started this game. And I was like, it's like when you will go back and watch a TV show, like your favorite TV show, somebody who's watching it for the first time, and you just want to be like, how great is this? Is this so great?
Can we talk about
the
it?
best show ever?
Let me know when you get this part and text me.
Yeah, exactly. Like, let me know when you finish the first palace. I gotta know what you think of what happens to Kamoshida. So I'm like really excited for him to be.
This week I'm thinking I might pick up a Master Chief collection and do Halo 1 and go through that on Heroic myself.
Yeah, dude.
I'm a big fan of doing the Heroic campaign.
Yeah.
Big fan. So
not Legendary.
No, I've tried Legendary and I'm like, this is ridiculous. Like it's just like you die. Yeah, I'm like, I don't want to do that. Yeah. Eventually you do train yourself, I feel like, 2 missions in to be like, okay, this is how you're supposed to do these kind of encounters.
Yeah. You have to approach it differently. You can't just run in and like you gotta know which enemy needs to go first and like how you're gonna get to them, and it's a little bit more tactical.
But I like Heroic. Heroic's a good difficulty for me with Halo games.
Good balance.
It's hard enough, but it's not so hard that it's angry.
Yeah. You gotta think about what you're doing, but as long as you thought about it beforehand, you'll be all right.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And I'm still also on the Destiny 2 grind.
I really like this new expansion of Destiny.
It's fun.
Yeah,
I'm trying to hunt the guns too.
I love Mars. I'm getting into it. And then there's a whole reveal that's happening on Tuesday.
Oh, we might have to talk about that next episode, depending on what they say.
Revealing the next expansion.
I'm so excited. I can't wait to text you during the day and not do any work.
Yeah, I'm gonna wake up early, I think, for it.
When is it? Is it in the
starts
morning?
at 9, so that lets you know what time I usually wake up.
Usually you wake up at 9:05 usually. So
right. That's right. Yeah. I usually wake up at 9:05. No. So I'm gonna wake up a little bit early, kind of sit down in the old video game chair and watch some video games.
Yeah. I love watching video games.
Me too.
When people are like, why do people watch Twitch? I'm like, you just don't get it, do you? It's so fun.
Yesterday when I was working on the research that we were doing for this episode, that's when I was watching my buddy play Persona, and it's just nice background noise. Just watch somebody else play. Yeah.
I loved watching the LCS with you.
Oh, gosh.
It's so fun.
That's coming back. The 16th of June is when LCS returns.
Oh yeah, I'm a big fan.
League of Legends fan. So.
Yeah, we're gonna do that when for Tyler and Mike Video Game Fest 2018. So that'll be a part of it.
We're gonna be playing lots of video games
and we'll watch it.
Yep, and watch it. That's
cool. Well, real quick, I keep forgetting to plug some stuff. Is it cool if I plug some stuff right now? You don't want to do it? You know, we can wait. No,
no, plug your stuff.
We have a email account that you can email us to at codexhistorypodcast@gmail.com. We are also on the Potaholics Comedy Network. You probably heard that from the bumper at the front of the show and the back of the show. Check out all those shows. They're great. They have articles that go up a lot. There's a guy who does video games and comic books writing that's really great. It's pretty cool. So check that out. Also, I do stand-up comedy, colettacomedy.com. And if you want to check out my dates, and then Tyler has Twitter.
Yeah, but I don't.
But he's not on it. So don't do that. Email that.
I mean, if you did at me, I would see it because I have the app and I get.
And he would respond to you.
And I would. Yeah.
Hey,
I mean, if people start I just don't have a reason to use it. But if people start talking to me on
send some kind words to Tyler and get him involved in this. You know, get him back sucked in again.
Yep. At Sneaker Elf.
At Sneaker Elf. I'm at Coletta, MECOLETTA. Also, for this podcast, we're not really advertising it. We're not going out of our way to be like, hey, internet, we're going to bother you. So if you can, give us a 5-star rating and review on iTunes. That would mean the world to us because it's the best way to get it out on iTunes. And just tell your friends.
But also, if you want to give us a lower rating, you should do that too, because we would love to hear your feedback.
Yeah, we are trying to get this show to be super awesome.
Yeah. If you think the show's bad, please tell us because we would like to make it better.
Yeah. Maybe give us a 5-star review still, but then give us a review that says what we could change.
Sure.
Does that work?
Yeah.
The stars affect us.
Okay.
But know what? You know what? You could do what you feel.
Do what you feel is right.
Listen to your heart.
Yeah.
And then let us know what you think. Because we do want to improve the show as much as we can.
Yep.
We want to be the best we are at the history of video games. Mm-hmm. And thank you so much for listening. And do you want to say anything to the audience before we leave, Tyler?
I think that's it.
Do you want to tell them you love them?
I love you.
This has been a Potaholics Comedy Network presentation. Potaholics.com